boys and girls. Today we're going to continue with Who is Stealing the 12 Days of Christmas by Martha Freeman. Chapter 25. I went to bed before Mom got back. My brain wanted to know what she found out, but my eyelids refused to cooperate. They kept falling shut. Luau had finally come home, and now he was curled up on my feet. He had done an amazing job cleaning up all the slobber. He didn't even smell like Leo G anymore. My dreams were terrible. I felt like Alice falling down the rabbit hole. The faces of the suspects whirled around me. The head of the Cheshire Cat grinned. Only this Cheshire Cat had pink eyes. I sat up so fast I felt dizzy. For a second, I thought I was still spiraling down the hole. Then I realized Luau wasn't on my feet. Is that what woke me up? Luau jumping off the bed? But wait, what was that horrible noise? Oh my gosh, the 12 days of Christmas at full volume, and the 12-day lights were blazing too. That must have been what woke me up, the ultimate holiday alarm clock. By now, everyone on Chickadee Court must be awake. What was going on? I looked out the window. With the lights, the street seemed bright as day. Nothing in our yard, nothing on the sidewalk, nothing at the Lees. I ran to the bathroom and stood on the toilet, pushed the curtains aside. Now I could see the Pop's house. And that's where he was. A kid holding a milk bucket. A kid so small, he almost looked like another 12-day decoration. But on which day of Christmas did my true love give to me? Michael Jensen? Mom had told me to stay in bed, but she hadn't counted on this. No one on all of Chickadee Court could stay in bed now. I sprinted down the stairs and opened the front door. Then I remembered my toes and had a good idea. Snow boots. They were by the front door. It only took a second to slide my feet in. Then I ran out. As I jumped down our front steps, I saw Yasmin busting out her front door too. On the 6th day of Christmas, the carol sang. Why was it so loud? What had turned it on in the middle of the night? What time was it anyway? Yasmin and I ran straight at Michael, but before we got near, he dropped the bucket. The clatter, when it hit him, woke him from his daze. He looked at me, then at Yasmin. His face was terrified. In a flash, he turned and ran right down the middle of the street. I followed, but it was hopeless. In 5 seconds, I was losing ground and out of breath. Tall, speedy Yasmin kept gaining, though. Now they were halfway down the block, racing hard toward Michael's house. Other people were coming outside. I could hear shouting, and then something scary happened. Michael's grandparents' huge van was still parked in front of their house. As Michael approached, the headlights switched on. The motor roared, the tires squealed, the van lurched forward. Michael was far enough ahead to veer off and go around it. But Yasmin hadn't caught up to him. The van barreled ahead. It was coming right at her. Chapter 26. My legs were slow, but my brain was in overdrive. My best friend was about to be flattened. Michael Jensen was the shape and the bird thief, and his grandparents? Were they the mega menagerie burglars? I was running, my eyes tearing, my legs pumping, ribs aching, and then all of a sudden I wasn't. I was flat on the cold, hard sidewalk. Ow! The jolt shook every bone and scrambled my brain. What had happened? Darn that snow boot. It had slipped on a puddle of ice, and my feet shot out from under me. Now my whole body hurt, and my lips tasted salty, like blood. But none of that mattered. I didn't matter. I wasn't the one about to be flattened. I rolled on my side and pushed up on a bruised elbow. 9 drummers drumming, 8 maids a milking, 7. The van kept coming. Yasmin swerved right to get out of its path, but unbelievably, the van swerved too. Behind me, I heard my parents' voices. By now, all the neighbors were running onto Chickadee Court, waving and yelling, trying to prevent the crash. One person had a head start on them all. A slow person, a clumsy person, a person as big as a bear. The collision happened in a blink, but I saw it all. In the headlights' glare, the big bear silhouette hit the skinny kid silhouette. The skinny one flew up and away. The bear stopped and stood in the headlights, defiant, like one man's body could stop tons of metal. A loud squeal, a colossal thud, a burnt smell. Bob! I shrieked just as Dad lifted me from the pavement. 11 ladies dancing, 10 pipers piping. Dad pulled me close and wrapped his arms around me. I wanted to bury my head in his shoulder and stay there, but that wouldn't change anything. I had to look. There were people clustered all around. I couldn't see Bub. Was he bloody? Knocked flat? Dead? Bub! 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 In all the voices I could make out Mr. Stone's deep, grouchy one, and Mrs. Blanco's, which was high-pitched and squeaky. Mrs. Lee kept repeating, "Are you all right? Are you all right?" Still carrying me, Dad ran towards the van. The headlights remained bright. Someone had gone around to the driver's side. I heard pounding. "Ambulance on the way," Mrs. Ryan hollered. Sirens, more noise on top of the music. 6 geese a laying, 5 golden rings, 4. Someone laughed. That was weird. Mr. Stone? "Look at it here in the back," he said. "Better get Detective Parakeet around to see this. And I suspect the kids will be interested." As we got closer, I heard something else. Something wonderful. Bub's voice, weak but gruff as ever. "No, Mrs. Lee, I am not all right," he was saying. "It hurts, being hit by a truck." Behind us, Mom breathed a sigh. Oh, thank heavens. Finally, Dad pushed through. There was Bub on the street. The van must have hit him at an angle. He was off to its right side, half of him in the headlights beam. He was leaning back on his elbow, shielding his eyes from the glare with his hand. He was wearing striped pajamas. The top was bloody. So were his hands. I couldn't see where the blade came from. His face was pale. He was barefoot. His toes were white and ugly. It was mean of me to notice his toes at a time like this, but I couldn't help it. Professor Jensen stood closest to him. He was talking, but I couldn't hear words. Mrs. Jensen was nowhere around. Neither were Michael and Billy. And where was Yasmin? How was Yasmin? I looked over by where she had landed. Too many people. I couldn't see. How hard had she fallen? There was a commotion around the driver's door, and it opened. My mom took over. "Gangway, ladies and gentlemen," she said. "All right, step out of the vehicle, please. Hands where I can see them." "And a partridge in a pear tree." With that, the 12-day lights were dark, and the music was silent. It was almost as big a shock as when they flashed on. For a moment, the street was black, except here in the headlights. Then the porch lights at the Ryans popped on, and after that, the light at the Jensens and the McNitts. Mom reached into the van and shut down the headlights. My teary eyes were grateful. The sirens came nearer. Dad put me down. I knelt next to Bub. "Do you hurt a whole lot?" I asked. Yup." His voice was wheezy, like he couldn't get his breath. It was scary. This big, powerful guy suddenly seemed so fragile. You're not looking so good either." I wiped my hand across my lip. Blood. Yuck. "I tripped," Klutzy said. "What happened to your sidekick?" I looked around for her again. This time I found her walking toward us. She was limping, leaning on her dad. There were tear streaks on her face, but there was a brave smile too. She was okay. I don't think I've ever felt so relieved. I stood up ready to give her a big hug, but of course I didn't. Way too embarrassing. Professor Pop nudged her toward Bub. "How do you feel?" she asked him. "You don't want to know," Bub said. "My dad says you saved my life." Bub took one wheezy breath, and then two. He shrugged and grimaced. "Better me down here than you." Yasmin's teary eyes brimmed over. "I'm really sorry," she said. "Are you going to?" Bub shook his head. "No, I'm not going to," he said. "And don't you be sorry. The darn driver should be sorry." Which reminded me, who was the darn driver? I looked up at the van. There was Mom helping whoever it was out. Now I saw. It was Michael's grandma. I recognized her happy-faced sweater. What kind of grandma tries to run over kids in the street? Mom slammed the van door, which made Michael's grandma jump. With Mom holding her arm, they walked toward the sidewalk. I couldn't see Grandma's face, but from the back she looked shaky, slow, and small. I didn't see Grandpa at all. Now the sirens got even louder. The ambulance had turned the corner onto Chickadee Court. Right behind it were the fire truck and 2 police cars. Every one of them wailed. We couldn't hear each other talk. The red lights made everything flash pink. The ambulance pulled alongside the van. It had barely stopped when 3 guys sprang out carrying a stretcher. From the radio blared a lot of official-sounding talk, code numbers, car numbers. I put my hands over my ears. It didn't help. It was the loudest night of my life. "Out of the way, please," hollered the ambulance guy. "Give the patient some air. All right now, what have we got?" The other ambulance guys hooked Bub up to wires and tubes. It seemed like no time at all till they had him slid into the back, and the siren wailed again, and the ambulance rolled away toward the hospital. I was worried about Bub, afraid for him, but soon I was distracted. There had never been so much action on Chickadee Court. Chapter 27. Yasmin and I found a place to sit on the sidewalk and watch. Police swarmed everywhere. Firefighters herded people further away from the van. A patrol officer put yellow police tape around it. More officers were asking the neighbors questions. This was kind of funny, I thought. Here were Yasmin and I, the only ones who knew what had happened and why, and nobody was asking us anything. "We should have figured it out sooner," Yasmin said. "Remember by the McNitts tonight when Michael said..." "Pink eyes," I nodded. "I know." "Shoot," Yasmin said. "I hate it when you're as smart as me." "Get used to it," I said. "But I only figured it out just now. You can't see the calling bird's eyes unless you're close to it. That's what Mr. Stone told us, and the only person who got close to the bird was the bird thief." "Ergo," Yasmin said, "Michael was the bird thief. Remember how he's been yawning so much?" "Oh, and he was subbing on that paper route. I bet it was easy to swipe birds while he was delivering newspapers in the dark." "Right," said Yasmin, "but there's still one thing I'm confused about. The milk bucket. Why did he go back for it tonight?" For once, I knew something she didn't. "Because he thought the mice were still in it," I said, "the ones from last night. That's where he hid them when I was chasing him." "And then you stole them," Yasmin couldn't help reminding me. "And then I gave them to my mom as evidence," I said. Yasmin smiled. "Good for you," she said. "But I bet she was mad. Oh boy, was she." Anyway, so Michael followed the treasure map, and the treasure map was made by Grandma. We said it at the same time. "But what about Grandpa?" said Yasmin. "Don't know," I admitted, "but I bet he was involved too. Even as tough as Grandma is, I can't see her robbing Mega Menagerie. And those other stores too, don't forget." "Right, I can't see her doing that by herself, so Grandma must have hidden a few of the stolen mice and the birds for Michael to find," Yasmin said. "Weird," Yasmin shrugged. "Maybe not. Even criminals love their grandkids. She was trying to give him some fun, a Christmas present." "Yeah," I said, "and also his parents wouldn't let him have mice, so she couldn't just wrap them and put them under the tree. She had to be sneaky." Yasmin nodded. "But isn't Michael kind of old to play with mice?" "How can you say that?" I said. "Mice are for all ages, and anyway, you know how grandparents are. They think kids are babies practically forever. But I've got another question. We know it was Michael who put the calling bird in the Sikora's bird bath, but why? I don't get it." "What about this?" Yasmin said. "What if you scared him last night and he thought he had to do something fast to throw you off the track? So what he did was put the calling bird at the Sikora's house. He knew Billy would see it when he went over there today." I nodded. "And knowing Billy, Michael could be sure the information would get spread around, and everybody knows about Sophie." "I feel sort of bad about Sophie now," Yasmin said. "Nobody should assume another person's a thief just because they're different, well, troublesome. That's what we all did with Bub, too." I wasn't worried about Sophie. I was too busy feeling bad about something else. I shouldn't have put Yasmin on the list of suspects. If I couldn't trust my best friend who just happened to be a girl, who could I trust? Detecting was not only hard work, it was dangerous too. It made you too suspicious. If I ever did any more detecting, I would have to watch out for that. "So now there's only one mystery left," said Yasmin. "There is?" "Hello," Yasmin knocked on my skull. "Don't you remember? We still don't know what was in Bub's bathtub." By now the street had quieted down. So when the police car's engine turned over, we jumped. Through the back window, I could just see Michael's grandma looking very small. Officer Kreikels was driving. Mom thumped the roof with her fist as it pulled away. "Beat you downtown," she said. I smiled and shook my head. Sometimes Mom is just so incredibly cool. There was more laughter from behind the van. I remembered how I heard Mr. Stone laugh before. What was that about? "Let's look," I said to Yasmin. I had to help her up. We walked around to the van with her leaning on me. People smiled at us. I felt important, like someone who has been supporting an injured hero for years and years now. A knot of people, Mrs. Descanado, Mr. Ryan, Mr. and Mrs. Swanson, were clustered around the back of the van. We pushed through till we ran into the police tape. In the crash, the van doors must have popped. They hung open still, and now that we could see what had flown out, we started laughing too. And that's where we're going to stop for today, and we'll read the conclusion tomorrow. Thanks.